Welcome to a brand new show, folks. It's great to have you with us again here on Fronteras, a Changing America. One of the things that has been recommended to us here at Fronteras is to bring back the political roundtable discussion that we got so used to listening to on the airwaves when there were political airwaves on the AM dial. And so that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be having an interesting political roundtable discussion about a changing America, about where we're headed as a community, the kinds of things that we enjoy talking about with all of you. Joining us today, we have a pretty neat panel for all of you, some familiar faces, perhaps some not so familiar faces. Joining us today, we have the host of The Third Rail, Chris Bailey. We also have the host of The Common Man, Gabriel Nila, and we have political consultant out of Austin, Texas, Moises Bujanda, who was actually born and raised here in El Paso. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Let's open up the table. No holds barred. A lot of things going on politically. Just yesterday, I was having a conversation with folks about the fact that it's just so frustrating that the whole debt ceiling situation is going the way that it has been going, and that it's prolonged, that it dragged on for so long, and the way that we're kind of dealing with it now. Your thoughts on what's going on, the overall tenor of politics right now?
Chris?
Okay. As far as the debt ceiling is concerned, I think, of course, most recently, we had President Obama walk out of talks with the Republican leadership. And the idea behind it, if you listen to the chatter coming from the right, many of them, you have Mitch McConnell saying, all right, well, what we're going to do is just hand it all to you and you can spend at your discretion. That's a political move. It's a very cynical move as well.
It sounds like a kindergartner.
Absolutely, because he doesn't want to remain accountable to his base,
right,
which is against raising the debt ceiling. So he's just going to have it for Obama and hope that they can have a plug if it's not successful in the 2012 elections, and they can use that against him in some way. But let us not forget how we got there in the first place. Let us not forget how we got a tremendous amount of debt. And there is, the Republicans are right on one point. We do have a spending problem in Congress. This isn't the president's fault necessarily. This has to do with Congress.
So you're saying this isn't the president's budget yet? Despite the fact that he's been in office in excess
the budget
of 2 years?
definitely belongs to the president,
Chris.
but it definitely...
You sound like a classic liberal.
Well, no, absolutely.
I love this.
Absolutely, but you cannot exonerate...
Speak for the Democratic Party, please.
You cannot exonerate the Republicans from any of this. You cannot exonerate. The last 2 years of the Bush presidency, they were in charge.
Chris, I agree with you, but the problem is this. You have both parties that are behaving like babies.
Absolutely.
As a parent,
I agree with you.
As a parent, I would go in there and set them straight and give them a good licking, okay? Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is that
I agree.
And we can make them eat their peas if they like.
We can make them eat their peas. Yes, let's have them eat their peas.
The bottom line is that neither the president nor the Republican leadership have come to the table and addressed the problem as most Americans would have expected them to as adults.
Exactly.
Wait, let me ask you a question, though.
Yes.
Who controls the purse strings?
I know you're going to say the Congress.
Who controls the purse strings?
The Congress.
Who controlled the purse strings the last 2 years?
Chris, I'll
of the Bush
ask you a
presidency?
question. When was the last time the president submitted a budget?
I have no problems.
He hasn't.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing. Everybody throws out the name Ronald Reagan. Mm-hmm. Everybody throws out the name Ronald Reagan. President Obama throws out the name Ronald Reagan. The Republicans throw out Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan raised the debt ceiling several times during his presidency. And you're right. No one has really. Everybody's saying, you come up with a plan. No, you come up with a plan.
How many times was it raised under Bush? The 8 years of his presidency. How many times was it raised under Bush? 3. And not only that, but the national deficit was increased by 3 times.
Right.
No, the Republicans said nothing about it. This is the problem, though, is that we have a cynical group of individuals on both sides of the aisle in Congress. The issue isn't whether or not liberals are tax and spend and Republicans are about saving. And their description is we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. We definitively have a revenue problem in this country. We definitively have a revenue problem.
But at the end of the day, is there an ideology that's at play here? I mean,
Absolutely.
Republicans and Democrats sound alike. They're both just going like this.
They do the same thing. It's tax and spend on both sides. It's what they tax and spend in favor of. Republicans tend to tax and spend in favor of security, national security. You're talking about a party that endorses the building of a preposterous machine, something that the Secretary of the on the Armed Services Committee has said explicitly, look, we don't need this weapon.
Yeah.
It is a cloaked boat that
But
the
it's good to
Navy
have.
has
But here's
said
the thing, it's good-
explicitly, look, we don't need it.
It's good to have though, because you never know, someone else may have that.
How much does it cost, Gabriel?
You know, I don't
I
know.
mean, you're a Republican.
You're
and you're
right.
saying it's good to have.
It's good to have,
It's
yeah.
good to have Legos too, but I don't need
good to
$3
have
billion
Legos.
worth or $10
But
billion
if you-
worth of Legos. I'm
But it
sorry.
comes to a point where it's like, well, there's going to be a time where we may need it. So let's go ahead and have
Where
that
are we
in
going to
place.
cinch our purse strings? When are we going to, if you're going to be a Republican, if you're going to be a conservative,
Okay.
when are you going to begin to cinch the purse strings? At one point or another, you're going to have to
You know where
rein
you know
in
where you're going
spending
to
on
Is
the
anybody
on
gonna
the
cinch
defense,
the
and
purse
you're
It's going
gonna
to go
have
across
raise
the board.
taxes
You're going to
on
have
the
to cut.
wealthy in
You're going
this
to have to
country.
cut.
I'm sorry.
You're going to have to cut across the board. Now, here's what I would say would be the best solution to do. Go ahead and do a temporary taxing debt increase. Say, okay, we're going to go ahead and move it up X amount of $1 billion.
Okay.
Okay, but at the same time, as we're doing that, we're going to cut left and right anywhere that we can. Whether it's funding to foreign nations, whether it's funding to domestic programs.
But at the end of the
and then we
day,
s- and then we
Gabriel,
say, as
people
that
always
goes on,
use that card. We
You're
don't
right.
spend that much in foreign policy. People tend to think that it's this mythical amount
It doesn't
of
matter.
huge cash when
but
it
doesn't
isn't.
matter. But it doesn't matter. It's money that's being spent. Let's go, for example, in a household. If we have, let's say, for example, a household has $25,000 in expenditures or money that's coming in. Okay, they can't be spending over that amount because they understand that if they go over that amount, they're going to have to find some way to shuffle the numbers around to go ahead and pay whatever's due. So what people normally do is that they will say, okay, this is how much I'm going to spend, and then from there start cutting as we go along.
Sure, but
Once I have
it's
enough
called a
money to go,
budget.
yeah.
Well, but
as
neither
we
the
say,
Republicans or the Democrats are
and
willing to
nobody
vote
can-
for it
and
right
no
now.
one-
So
nobody's going to do
I
that
mean,
part. So let's
or
Gabriel, let me interject something though. In a household, you have an explicit notion of what you are spending and what you're spending money on. In our government, because of the security apparatus as well, we have monies that have been devoted via numerous departments. Department of the Treasury. They have money that's being funneled into the security industry. Virtually every department that sits in the government that is involved in policy and policy making has funnels that are funneling federal funds into the security apparatus. That is unaccountable. It is inauditable because it's a matter of state security. This is to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars.
We can project that. We can estimate. We can have a piece of paper saying, okay, I'm projecting this is how much money we're going to be funneling into these areas,
Right.
and that's fine. If it's over, then it's over. But if it's within those targets, then we can go ahead and we can
My
manage.
point being
the
is
Warren
whole
that
Buffett,
together.
Go ahead.
Gentlemen,
go ahead.
Warren Buffett had an interesting quote, and he said it throughout the course of this past week. And he said that if it was up to him, he could solve it right away. All he would say would be that he would pass a law that would say that if the debt was 3%, of GDP, then at that point all Congress will be ineligible for re-election. That's what Warren Buffett said. At the end of the day, are we talking about political kindergarten and us really not getting the job done? Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it doesn't matter. Are we saying that these leaders are not?
But don't the parties, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, don't the parties reflect the opinion of the country? And that is that America as a whole is split right down the middle on all kinds of issues, and neither side is willing to budge. So we're like at a standstill with so many issues, and we really don't move forward. I mean, I'm listening to you too.
I disagree.
You're no
with,
different than the rest of the country.
I disagree with that. I think that if you look at polling, for instance, congressional polling, they have dismal numbers on both sides of the aisle because of what they're doing. Now, let me ask you a question. The Democrats have caved on virtually all of the policy issues, and I'm not assuming a liberal stance here.
Wait,
I'm just
define
I'm
that,
saying.
though.
I didn't say anything,
What
Chris.
policy issues? What
saying-
policy issues have they caved?
Well, they've caved with regard to, as far as the debt ceiling is concerned, they've caved on numerous issues with regard to taxation. The extension of the Bush tax cuts.
You mean Obama?
For instance,
the Democrats or Obama?
he's the leader of his party.
Oh, thank you.
He is the leader of his party.
Thank you
so
for
let's
the
be explicit
clarification.
about that. Let's be explicit about that.
And both Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, while they've squawked and balked a little bit, have gotten in line and towed the party line as far as Obama has been leading the Democratic Party. Let me also point out that Obama in particular, as executive, has left and put Social Security cuts on the table for the Republicans to take if they will extend the debt ceiling. Outside of just the debt ceiling, though, you look at other policy decisions, the extension of the Patriot Act for another 4 years, with virtually no provisional clauses placed in to safeguard American civil liberties in this country. None whatsoever. That is a huge issue. There were two people, as far as I'm concerned, that were overt opponents of this. That was Ron Paul on the right, and you had Dennis Kucinich on the left. The only two, the rest of their parties were silent on this. And what you're seeing, actually, to answer your question, Moises, is that in my opinion, the fight between the left and the right in this country over substantive policy issues is political theater, and it's an illusion. What we see and what we are fighting in this country is a fight about liberty or libertarians over authoritarians.
But, Chris, to your point of the Congress has dismal numbers. So what? They continue to get reelected. The percentage of
Well,
Congress,
no,
the
the Republicans did not. The Republicans did not. There was
civic engagement.
There was a
no one votes.
Absolutely, but there was also a virtual revolution, if you remember,
Just a couple of
with the
months
election
ago.
of the Republicans.
Right.
So that actually pulls the rug out from underneath what you're
they're
saying.
not in.
Well,
They're not in.
Not necessarily. He's actually correct that everything, the public is in the center of the whole mix. But what's happening is that, as you mentioned, in 2010 we had the election where there started to become a shift. This is a slow process that's going to take, but unfortunately it's a slow process, and not many people are slowly realizing that the standard that they're used to is not what it should be right now, and we have politicians that are saying, yeah, I'll go and do this for you, and then turn around and say, oh, sorry, couldn't do it.
Yeah, but see, I get frustrated with people, Gabriel, that say, this whole process is going to take time. The economic situation of our country is something that's going to take time, and for me, that's a load of BS. That's a load of people talking about how they want to cover once, twice, thrice, again and again, over and over for their politicians, and at the end of the day, you say they keep getting elected. And we say they keep getting elected with a dismal voter turnout, particularly in places like El Paso.
Which is not representative of the general population of the United
due to
States. The
lack
people
of
that are
civic
polled are
engagement,
often people that
civil
don't
engagement,
vote. And
civic
they don't
engagement.
vote because of apathy. They vote because they feel disenfranchised. They vote because they feel like they don't vote because they feel like they are not represented when they elect a leader into office. And oftentimes, I have to say it, that is the case. That voter disenfranchisement is a very real thing. In what way, let me ask you, in what way do blue dog Democrats represent liberal Democrats? And there are blue dogs that are voted into office by liberals.
They represent their community. They
In what
represent
way?
their community.
No, I'm asking you, in what way do they represent their community?
Their community voted them based on their platform. So therefore,
Based off of what voter turnout?
On a small voter turnout, regardless
So
of the
they
regardless of the voter
they
turnout,
represent
Chris,
a minority of
no,
their
no, no,
community.
no, no.
Let's be clear about that.
Regardless of the voter turnout, the individual who is elected is elected legitimately by that small percentage, and they are there to represent those
Would you
that got
admit that that's
elected.
a minority of the population?
The same thing applies.
Would you admit
for
that that's
the
a
supporters
minority
that
of the
finance those
population?
campaigns.
Would you admit that that is a minority of the population? And as the minority, this is the very
We're
thing.
not going to have
let's
we're
talk
not
more.
going to have large number of voter participation in this country. We never have had a period, and a minority is always going to elect a person that you might think is not representative of the majority.
This is the
Let's
very
talk
thing that
tangible things,
J.S.
though,
Mill.
gentlemen.
Just let me interject really quickly before we move on. This is the very thing that the philosopher J.S. Mill had a problem with, the tyranny of the minority over the majority. This is a major problem that he had. Is balancing
Teabaggers,
that.
the mob mentality.
Right,
Teabaggers.
this is a major problem.
And you know how to resolve it? We have to get the engagement of the majority that don't vote have to become now engaged in what's going on, and it's going to be up to them. Now, if they choose not to, then I'm sorry, we can't do anything to say, hey, you got to vote, and if they say no, pues too bad.
Okay, look, but let's bring it back to something tangible. Let's bring it back to our own community. We're talking from a perspective of West Texas and Southern New Mexico.
Right.
Let's take the El Paso community, which we're all very familiar, the El Paso, Las Cruces, Ciudad Juarez area. We're talking about politicians that are supposed to, yes, represent their communities. Are they legitimately elected? Sure, Moises, they're legitimately elected. How many of these individuals can we actually say are truly representing a future vision for this community, something that is worthwhile? I'm not sure I could come up with one name.
If you don't agree with the representation, why don't you go in and change it?
Well,
Why
it
don't?
begins with a
And
discussion.
I'm not
That's
pointing.
a bit- I mean-
And I'm
But
not
you-
pointing.
you
Wait,
assert
wait.
that-
I'm
you
not.
assert
No,
that
no, no.
though,
I'm
like
not pointing the
that's
finger at
easy.
him.
I love
but you
it.
assert that
I'm
as
not pointing
at-
the finger at him. I'm pointing the finger also at you and a lot of
What I'm
our
s-
viewers who complain about the process and about the system, but do not get involved in it.
You assert that as if that's an easy thing. One of the options in changing is to run for office yourself. What does it take to run for office?
Money.
It takes money. That's the most important thing.
And who controls the purse strings in
And
El Paso?
Precisely. Who are the
Who are the kingmakers?
Who are the
Yeah,
kingmakers
of
in
course.
the area? Not just El Paso, but Las Cruces. We have Las Cruces. Numerous areas in the region have a very real problem with an access to funds in order to run for office. We had numerous viable candidates in El Paso that ran as write-ins with a dismal amount of funding.
Por favor,
With a
Chris.
dismal
Don't
amount of
even don't get me started here, okay?
Okay.
Don't put a writing candidate as a legitimate candidate.
Why not? That's part of the democratic process,
por
is it
favor.
not?
You're making
Moises?
a joke of the whole system,
Is it
okay?
not? Is
no,
it not
no.
part
Let me
of-
tell you.
why is it
no,
allowed then,
because
if it's a
writing
joke?
candidates
If
do
it
not win. Okay.
Moises, if it
writing
delegitimates
candidates
the
is you
process-
and your uncle.
Remember?
It did
In
happen
Alaska?
in Alaska. Writing candidate won.
Oh, in Alaska. So now we're going to move the model of Alaska here.
No, we want
We're going from the cold
No,
to the
you-
desert
why
heat.
not?
That's what we're doing.
You're
The
throwing
democratic
around the
process-
joke.
the
No, no, no.
democratic
Talk
process
about me
extends to
in
all of the
working
United
within the
States.
system,
What's
not
with
working
this-
outside it.
What is with this high-handed, high horse mentality? Oh, we're going to move Alaska to El Paso. What's with that? That's almost
What's with
that's
that?
almost
You
a
gave-
snobbery.
You gave me an example,
Right.
one example of one county in Alaska,
The fact
and you
is-
want to apply it to the rest
fact-
of the country?
No,
Come on, give
I'm
me a
talking
no,
about the
por favor, give me
locality
a
of El
break.
Paso, even in county
Get
elections.
for real, Chris.
At the end of the day, though,
I did.
guys, at the end of the day, though, when we're talking about this community, look at the voter turnout. You have a city of 800,000 county-wide, and I'm talking El Paso, and what was it? What was the voter count? I mean, maybe you know it better than I do, Moises, but it was something near 14,000 voters the last cycle. Right. 14,000 people came out and selected these group of individuals that are now in these elected offices, supposedly representing a community. Is it legitimate? Sure, it's legitimate. But is it the kind of leadership that we need? Here we are around a table discussing the future of the debt ceiling situation and how badly it has all gotten in Washington, D.C. But even in our own community, we have this group of people that are elected by a dismal amount of people. Is it legitimate? Sure. But is it what this community needs? You have a community that has, economically, our community is faring better than most communities around the nation. You got Fort Bliss expanding here. You have businessmen and women coming into the community, setting up businesses in a bad economy. You have the housing market relatively stable in El Paso, yet the leadership in and around our city continues to be elected by a small amount. It's controlled by a small purse string. There are a group of kingmakers. I mean, let's flesh out some candidates. Let's flesh them out.
Make no mistake,
Who
that
are
occurs
some?
across the United States in many communities? El Paso's not alone or isolated in that.
There's 4 people on this table right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'll ask the question: when was the last time you participated in a campaign or gave financial help to a campaign?
Oh,
I can tell you the last time I did
I
it.
can
and that
tell
was,
you, I donate to campaigns all the time. I mean, I'm not just involved
You're the
in
exception.
electoral
You're the
campaigns.
exception.
I'm not just.
You're the
I'm
exception.
Just, I'm
But
not
is that
just
the only way to
in
get
electoral
involved with a
campaigns.
campaign nowadays?
No, that's not the only way. But you're gonna participate in campaigns if you feel close or you know the individual or you know his or her agenda. If people are not participating, it's because the candidates are not addressing the issues or networking to bring those voters into
And they're not specific.
the circle.
And they're not
They're
specific.
not specific. You can have someone that's going to say, "Well, I'm going to lower taxes. I'm going to lower property taxes." Well, how are you going to do it? You know, I'm going to go ahead and bring new business. How are you going to do it? Tell me what you're going to. Tell me your plan. When you send me your flyer, what is your plan for to bring business in here? What is your plan so I can have more money in my pocket at the end of the year? You know, there's nothing in there that's. If we were to have somebody that just say, "I'm going to break it down the following manner," I'd jump on that person in a heartbeat. I'd say, "This is the one."
I mean, you guys have seen political candidates come in and out of this community for years. Any one particular candidate stand out to you with a vision, with a passion, a dedication to really take this community to the next level, that really was a person of this community, supported, backed by a great amount of the community? I really can't think of one.
Across the board?
Across the board.
I know that there's going to be a good discussion here about this, but I'll go ahead and say it, even though there's been small participatory within the electorate. I'll mention Silvestre Reyes. I'll mention Veronica Escobar. I'll mention, I'll go ahead and put it on the table, John Cook. Look at the number of the...
That's what I was going to say, with barbecue sauce?
Look at the number of times that he's been reelected.
With his guitar?
Look at the number of times that he's been reelected, and...
but what was his legacy, Moises? What did he do for El Paso?
Maybe it's what he didn't do for El Paso.
Well,
Wait,
I mean,
what do you mean?
No.
Wait, explain yourself. Explain yourself. What do you mean by that?
Okay. Because right now, in the current atmosphere that we have in El Paso, the FBI investigations and so forth, at this point, the politicians who are in office right now and who are being reelected, I think we can honestly say, are clean. Okay, the vast majority of them who are still there,
or they just haven't been caught yet.
And when I say it's what he didn't do, because maybe he's been there because he's been clean, he's been following his ethics, his moral judgment, his political compass. Maybe it doesn't please you or I, but bottom line is, with as many individuals as we have seen gone down, maybe it's not bad that these guys who are in there, although we might question what they have done or accomplished, at least they have not gotten caught up in the wrong moral compass.
And I hope you don't take this the wrong way, Moises,
Please.
but it sounds like we're settling for mediocrity.
Or less.
And I'll go ahead and put that on the table. In the current atmosphere that we are facing in El Paso, and in fact, I'll go ahead and make this statement too. In the current atmosphere that we are facing here in El Paso, and that New Mexico is facing with state government because of Bill Richardson and all of the scandals that have been and are currently on the table, then in El Paso you're going to continue the status quo, quote unquote, if you want to call it that, mediocre leadership that hasn't been tainted by any scandal. In New Mexico, what you're seeing is the Democrats taking a hit because of what Richardson has done. And the best case example of that would be Susana Martinez, because let's put everything on the table. If as an incumbent, Diane Dennis would have been, who ran for governor and got caught up not because of her own making, but because of Bill Richardson's baggage, I think that cost her the election, which left the opportunity for Susana and a lot of Republicans to go in there based on the baggage of someone else.
Major difference though there is
I know, I'm
that
talking statewide,
New Mexico,
I'm talking-
well wait though, even beyond the statewide thing, New Mexico has a Republican Party. El Paso has a non-existent sans Gabriel and company. But I'm just teasing. But I mean, it's like it's non-existent. So when has El Paso ever taken a hit for its scandals and its politicians and its scandals? It's taken a hit on a personal level, but not on a party-wide level. Not in a let me hold you to account.
No, I think I disagree with you. Okay, and I disagree with you in reference to has El Paso taking a hit because of the scandals because of the scandals, okay? And the answer is yes. And I think you all will agree on this observation. The fact that we have in El Paso low voter participation, and I'll make this prediction, we will continue having dismal voter participation in elections for the next decade. Because as long as we are going through this process of, quote unquote, a cleanup corruption effort, it's going to be in the minds of individuals, and it will continue to impact the voter participation.
I think that is.
You're not going to be able to do anything about
that is
that.
actually
Last comments, gentlemen.
that's actually supporting your premise, I think, with faulty information. First of all, if you look at the voter behavior in El Paso for the last 20 years, it's been dismal. The best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. It's dismal and has been for the last 20 years in this city and in this region.
It's going to get more dismal.
Precisely
It's
because
gonna get more dismal,
of a
Chris.
lack of confidence in government in general, in both parties.
So
It
at the end
started
of the
in the
day-
70s, it continued in the 80s, it went into the 90s, and it will continue.
Chris,
But
at the
it's-
end of the day, and you know what, you guys are all hitting the points that we have been talking about on this program and on our own individual programs. There is a changing environment within America today. There's a changing environment within our community, and at some point it's got to change. It begins with a discussion. You're asking what we do. I think it begins with a discussion, and unfortunately, the discussion this time around is done.
Well,
I hope that we can
Really?
continue it. Yes,
I think it also it has to continue with some measure of direct action. I think the presupposition here is that you have to go through political establishments, institutions, and leaders in order to get things done. That's a presupposition.
Folks, that's it for us today. Thank you for joining us on Fronteras, a Changing America. Until next time, I'm Hector H. Lopez.